Is art really that important in our lives? Some might say it's like the icing on the cake, adding beauty to our everyday routines, whether it's decorating our homes or wearing stylish clothes. Others see art as a way to express our emotions and release our inner energy. To some, art is just another form of entertainment, like playing cards or watching a funny TV show. Whether it's sculpting with clay or creating a quirky painting, it's all about having a good time. These different views on art are all around us. Sometimes, we just want to kick back and watch something silly on TV to take our minds off things. It's like saying, who cares about that math problem right now? Let's just relax and have some fun. Imagine sitting in a cafe, having a chat, and suddenly the owner plays Mozart's music in the background. It sets the mood, but we don't really have a say in it, do we? However, these casual encounters with music miss the true essence of art and its deep significance in our lives. Art is about seeking truth, and we'll come to realize that over time. We are now entering the first lecture, which is about art and truth, not about beauty and truth. Beauty does not have a tangible existence, it is not something pre-existing that we finally discover. Without the human soul and the creative activities of art, beauty does not exist. Beauty does not include the inherent properties of external things, including natural objects. If you say that animals can also appreciate beauty, for example, you might give the example of a peacock. When a male peacock opens its beautiful wings, it attracts its counterparts, indicating that peacocks can also appreciate beauty, right? So, personifying this peacock, the beauty of the male peacock's beautiful wings has a biological basis, doesn't it? It needs to attract the opposite sex, right? It uses beauty to attract the opposite sex, doesn't it? It is only judged as beautiful by human eyes. Its brightness, prominence, and distinctiveness are real, right? So, the female peacock comes along, and whether it is judged as beautiful is the judgment of the human soul. So how does the human soul make this judgment? If humans did not engage in actual artistic activities, including the very primitive form of transforming the images of natural objects in the form of witchcraft. For example, painting that bull on the wall of the cave. That leaping wild bull is not a faithful representation of the actual bull, it is the best kind of artistic creation, one that is undertaken for countless purposes. If such activities had never occurred, then we would not see the beauty of nature. Our appreciation of natural beauty is not universally agreed upon, right? Sometimes I feel this when I go to Europe. 2 years ago, I traveled to Switzerland in Europe, and when I saw that, I felt the grandeur of the natural scenery. The lakes, the mountain ranges, the continuous peaks of the Alps, covered in perennial snow, shining in the sunlight with a cold brilliance, so beautiful. Later, I felt that they always lack something. When you go to Europe, isn't it about experiencing cultural landscapes? And also natural landscapes? I feel it always lacks something, that kind of melancholy and sorrowful natural scenery. The willows by the river, in the misty rain, that kind of beauty is missing. Have you noticed this when you travel to Europe? No. But in China? Yes. So what is natural beauty? There is no unified concept, right? But it can evoke, for example, I have always been thinking about Westerners traveling to China. I'm talking about Westerners, not Southeast Asians. So when they come to China and see the natural scenery that has been frequently depicted in the poems and lyrics of ancient Chinese people, what kind of feelings will they have? Will they think of Taoism and Zen, and so on? It's different. So there is no inherent beauty in nature itself, right? Nature itself is neither beautiful nor not beautiful, right? The human artistic soul, the artistic spirit is the spirit of the mind. Different ethnic groups have their own spiritual traditions, so their perception of natural beauty varies. However, being different doesn't mean we can't communicate, right? We appreciate Western art, such as painting or music, and Westerners also appreciate our art, and so on. So, what I'm trying to say is that art, the artistic soul, allows us to appreciate the beauty of things, including nature. Take the example of the withered vine, old tree, and cawing crow. Isn't it beautiful? Why do foreigners find it beautiful when it's withered? Isn't the withered vine unattractive? The old tree, what's so good about being old? The crow is still cawing, and suddenly we find it beautiful. That's the Chinese spirit. The artistic soul of the Chinese people. Right? Let's not ignore the human artistic soul when discussing objective beauty. So, we are still discussing the philosophy of art, not traditional aesthetics, for this reason. The first section is about the fundamental principles of art. Which principle is it? It's about why we, as humans, need art. Just such an answer, the most basic answer. Humans have preserved the ability to change natural objects by using production tools, is that right? You saw the machines we made today, and you saw an ancient stone axe. Whether it's the tools from the Paleolithic or Neolithic periods, they are stored in museums. So, when we see these, for example, the tools used by the early humans in the Neolithic period, we immediately understand how people at that time transformed natural objects, and the ability to transform natural objects was preserved in the form of tools, right? Then, human understanding of the natural world can also be preserved in various forms. The most complete and accurate preservation method now is science. Humans have figured out a lot about nature using science and all that, but what about our feelings? They come and go, but we want to hang on to them, you know? When we're all wrapped up in those intense emotions, we want to keep them alive, and the only way to do that is through art. The musical score written down by a composer hundreds of years ago, after hundreds of years, this score has become old and parched, placed in front of us. As long as we have the ability to read music, what do we read? It's not just a series of concepts. It's a musical score. As we read the score, the music resonates deep within our hearts, right? Do you have the ability to read music? I now feel my biggest regret is what? Not knowing how to read music. So we have a teacher, he filled out a form. It's just a hobby, our professors have to fill in the hobby section. Now this section is gone, I feel it's a great pity. We should ask our professors, besides your major, what are your hobbies? Please fill it out, right? So he filled in reading the full score of Tchaikovsky's symphony. Amazing, right? I was in awe when I saw it. But when I want to listen to Tchaikovsky's symphony, what do I want to hear? People have already performed and recorded it on a record. He doesn't have to listen, he knows it by reading it himself. This is incredible, what a level of refinement. Later, I found that I could only read simplified music scores. Simplified music scores are those short songs, right? You also need to practice singing, right? I'm not good at it as yet. So when he is reading the score, as this note unfolds, the symphony resonates in his ears. When we face the musical score written down hundreds of years ago, its paper is old and yellow, but if we can read music, the vivid, powerful, and lively emotions that surged in the composer's heart at that time are once again brought out by you, right? Humans have no other way to preserve our fresh and powerful emotions. Humans have found, long ago, a method called art. Ancient villagers would hold a witchcraft ritual as they set out to hunt, or to deal with life-threatening battles against nature. The community's emotions were poured into the witchcraft ritual, and somehow it ended up being preserved as some kind of original artwork, although back then, we wouldn't have called it art, it was just considered witchcraft. Alright, now we see clearly, we can make an analogy. Our modern civilization, our technological civilization has given us refrigerators, right? What's the purpose of a refrigerator? To keep food fresh, isn't it? Now, this food. It's a whole different story now. At least we put that fish, a fresh fish, in the refrigerator so that we can still eat it in 2 weeks' time, right? And when we take it out, it's still fresh. Let's make a simple metaphor. That's what art is, right? It's the refrigerator where humanity stores its emotions. That's why we need art. This point has already surpassed Aristotle's initial understanding of the nature of art. Aristotle believed that the essence of art lies in the human instinct for imitation. We must acknowledge that the more advanced animals, such as the higher primates, also have a natural instinct for imitation. Have you observed young chimpanzees? You can see how much they love to imitate. So, humans are a bit more advanced than chimpanzees, so this instinct for imitation is similar to that of chimpanzees, but chimpanzees, of course, don't grow up to become adults. Once they become adult chimpanzees, they lose interest in imitation. Therefore, humans are like forever young chimpanzees. So, they just want to imitate, and in imitation, they find joy and happiness. This is where Aristotle said the origin of art lies, in the human instinct for imitation. Why do we try to depict a realistic object on a canvas through painting? We are trying to make it as lifelike as possible, right? That's imitation. Imitation itself brings joy, and it is said that art originates from this. Of course, we shouldn't be too critical of this great and knowledgeable genius, Aristotle, right? Of course, when it comes to human thinking about the nature of art, he was just getting started, he had only taken a few steps forward, right? So, we can understand those naive thoughts, but we mustn't think like that ourselves, it's quite absurd. For example, how advanced is today's photography technology? Because the technology has reached such a level of precision, what do we call the camera in our hands? A digital camera. When comparing the pros and cons of a digital camera, what is the main difference? Pixels, right? So, a digital camera with high pixels can capture extremely precise and lifelike images, right in your camera. Since we have reached this point, why do we still need painters? Modern technology has brought our imitation to such a precise level, so we can just play with this camera, satisfying our interest in imitation, and then everyone can be an artist, you know. Now, when we travel everywhere, people all over the world are moving east and west, with common characteristics. This phone, it's multifunctional, right? It has a photography function, and then you snap a picture, and immediately share it online, right? It's like creating a work of art, and then it gets widely circulated. So, Fudan University sent 5 of us professors to visit 2 universities in the United States. One was Georgetown University, and the other was Yale University. It's like Yale and Fudan are sisters, you know? Because one of our former Fudan University presidents graduated from Yale and wanted to make Fudan the Yale of the East. So, Fudan's history is closely connected with Yale. We went on this visit to learn about the liberal arts education experience at Yale University. On the weekends, we had nothing to do, and no one was available to receive us. So, the 5 of us went to Washington, D.C. to visit during the weekend. D.C. is a city that commemorates the history of the founding of the United States, right? You can tell the layout of the entire city from its architecture. When you walk in, you don't even know if it's a rural area or a city. Of course, its political center has the Washington Monument, with its pointed top, pointing straight to the sky. On the opposite side of the Washington Monument's central axis is the Lincoln Memorial. In between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial is a very large rectangular pool. I just said that DC looks a lot like the countryside. Why? Because there are dense woods on either side of the pool. In the autumn season, the maple leaves fall, right? When we arrived in Washington, the locals told us that there had been a heavy snowfall 5 days before. Now the snow has melted, but a thin layer of ice has formed on the surface of this large rectangular pool, and what is floating on the water? Layers of deep red maple leaves, which have been captured by the thin ice. When we walked to the edge of the pool and looked at the water, we were all amazed. How beautiful! So, my colleagues grabbed their digital cameras and took pictures of this water surface. I never travel with a camera, I bring my eyes and my soul, you know. So, they must have been as amazed by the beauty of this water surface as I was, and a sense of wonder arose, so they couldn't help but take pictures. What's the point of taking pictures? Of course, to take back home. At that time, there was no mobile internet, right? You couldn't send it out on the spot. They took it back to show their family and friends. So, I told them, you took the pictures and you can see the effect on the spot, right? Digital cameras can be viewed on the spot without the need for printing. Take a look, how is it? Everyone looked. I said, do you all have a common feeling? The picture on the camera and this water surface, do they look alike? Very much alike, extremely realistic and accurate. But what is the difference between what we see now and what you see in the camera? They said there is a difference. Where is the difference? I don't know, Mr. Wang, you tell us. I said, if you take these pictures back to show your family and friends. When we were there. How beautiful the water surface of that pool was, but they didn't see it. Just like that, it's pretty, that's all. What's missing? That sense of surprise. Can the camera capture the surprise feeling that the beauty of the water surface in Washington's pool gave us? Impossible. They said, Mr. Wang, what do you mean? I said, what I mean is, among the 5 of us, who is a painter? If you are, do one thing now, set up your canvas. Face the water surface of this pool and paint a sketch. Unfortunately, none of our colleagues were painters, so we couldn't do this, so we picked up the camera, and the difference is here. When we want to paint the water surface of this pool on our canvas, what is our strongest impulse? To paint the emotion that this water surface gives us onto the canvas, which the camera cannot do. If you want to preserve your emotion, of course, it is caused by the beauty of the water surface, on the canvas, you must distort this water surface. The camera won't distort it, it's realistic, it's lifelike, it doesn't distort. Now we understand the meaning of painting, it cannot be replaced by modern photography. The purpose of our painting is not to faithfully reproduce the object. What are we trying to capture through painting? It's the emotional resonance of the subject. It is only when we are moved by something that we painted, even if it's just an apple, still life. Take Cézanne, for example, when he painted that apple, he was so focused. He poured all his passion into it and painted the apple. But is it the real apple? No. The apple sparked his imagination and emotions, and he transferred all of that onto his canvas, thus distorting the apple. You know, it's just a tiny thing, that apple. But after Cézanne's brushwork, it moves us. Have we seen Van Gogh's paintings? For example, the sunflower painting, it's very famous. It's quite different from real sunflowers, it's distorted. Why distort it? So, let me quote a passage. This philosopher, Collingwood, wrote a book called The Principles of Art. I read a passage in it that was very well written. He criticized the idea that the essence of art is imitation and representation. How did he criticize it? Collingwood wrote in The Principles of Art, "A wild animal looks different when we are afraid than when we are not, and a person we admire seems to have large, stern eyes." Therefore, a seasoned painter truly understands how to achieve realism. That is, he knows that he must use appropriate exaggeration to achieve emotional truth.